Hello and welcome to Awin's content stream for the second day of PI Live. We've got a packed agenda for you today with a series of sessions from a variety of presenters across the whole Awin business, as well as some of our really valued clients and partners. So we hope you find it all very insightful. Before I kick off, I do want to mention that there's not going to be a live Q&A directly after this session, but we will be doing a closing live Q&A wrap-up at the end of the day, where myself alongside Ian Charlesworth, Dawn Quigg and Ros Beresford will be there to answer all your questions from all the sessions that have taken place throughout the day. I'd also like to mention that we're very proud to have been shortlisted for the International Performance Marketing Awards, and we'd be really honoured to have your vote for Best Affiliate Network and Best Team in Performance Marketing before lines close tonight. So you can find the links for that across all our social media. Before I carry on, I did want to explain that, you know, it's an incredible year, and we are full of hope and optimism for this amazing industry that we're all so passionate about and privileged to be a part of. And we really want to use today as an opportunity to show how this industry is changing and adapting to ever-changing client needs, and how everyone can play a part in that success. What you're not going to hear from us today is Awin denigrating or talking down the competition. It's disappointing that some have used this platform to score cheap points and talk down areas of the performance marketing industry. We're actually only interested in punching up, not sideways. This industry has a long and proud history of collaboration, and we remain absolutely committed to that, regardless of what other companies are trying to do. So today is about giving some context to the other sessions that we're running and highlighting to you a thread that runs through all the way through the content we're going to be presenting, and hopefully ties it all together, makes it make sense for you. And in order to do that, I have to take a quick look at how we got to where we are today in this, the most challenging of years, and to explain that, you know, despite this being such a trying year, there's so much to look forward to. There's plenty of reason for our collective industry to be hopeful and optimistic. And so with that, I'm going to kick off the presentation. First thing to say is how much we're going to miss you all. I mean, normally at this time of year, we'd all be together in Old Billingsgate Market with an incredibly busy stand. And unfortunately this year, as you can see from the slide, this is probably what Old Billingsgate Market looks like today. And it's actually just a short walk from our office, which unfortunately will also be empty, as are many of our offices around the world, as we deal with this pandemic. So instead of that hustle and bustle of previous years where we would have welcomed you to our stand, we have to make do with a remote event today. And that's a real shame, because I always look forward to our industry events. We often talk about how relationships are one of the driving forces behind our industry. And it's true to say that 2020 has really tested our collective mettle by largely removing that very important dimension. Now for us, 2020 was due to be a very special year, a year of celebration. It's actually our 20th birthday. And as many of you will know, Awin is an amalgamation of a number of companies, and actually Affiliate Window, Xanox and ShareASale were all founded in the year 2000. And so this 2020 was going to be a great opportunity for us to look back and reflect on how far both we and the wider industry have come in those 2 decades. And any of you that have worked in the industry for that length of time, or if you've had a chance to read our Awin report, which tries to document this evolution, you'll know the leaps and bounds that have been made in that relatively short time period. It's really quite bizarre to think that back then in 2000, we had no Facebook, there was no Twitter, no YouTube, no Amazon Prime. Even the iPhone was still 7 years from being launched. And affiliate marketing has had to adapt to all of these world-changing phenomena. But unfortunately, instead of savoring this year as planned, and we had plenty of parties planned and celebrations with the team as well, and we wanted to reflect on all those incredible moments that Awin had reached over the years, we instead find ourselves having to respond to yet another enormous world-changing phenomenon in the shape of COVID-19. Nobody was prepared for what took place earlier this year, and we're all still adapting to the new world that has emerged out of it. But with the spread of the virus around the world in the early months of 2020, planes were grounded, shops closed, cities shut down as local restrictions came into action, and we entered into what the IMF christened the Great Lockdown. And while everyone was stuck at home for that brief period, it really did feel like the entire planet had gone into a state of forced hibernation. There was a huge flurry of graphs and charts that came out during the initial lockdown, demonstrating the consequences of this sudden pause on human activity. But this is actually one of my favorites that came from a group of seismologists, actually from my home country in Ireland. And they've been measuring seismic noise of the Earth to try and identify when earthquakes might happen. And usually that process was particularly difficult to undertake because there's this constant background hum of vibrations that humans cause just going about their daily activity. But with the world in lockdown, that human hum suddenly and conspicuously disappeared, as we can see from this chart. Really quite fascinating. And of course, while the city centres and towns emptied and practically everyone, bar key workers, were compelled to stay at home, internet activity absolutely surged. And Zoom has arguably been the poster child of the lockdown. You know, the web conferencing platform saw a massive uplift in activity as everyone adapted to remote working on a full-time basis. And you can see here how that uplift was mirrored in Zoom's stock price as investors poured their money into a company experiencing such a sudden and unprecedented growth. And that would have been a good bet if you were one of the lucky investors smart enough to buy Zoom at the right time. But unfortunately, there were some who bought into the similarly named Zoom Technologies, and that unfortunately was not the case for them, because Zoom Technologies is actually a mobile hardware company based in India, and it saw its shares grow by more than 1,800% by late March, before the SEC said they had to suspend the stock because obviously something funny was going on there. And this kind of panic-based activity was typical of that time, of those early months of the lockdown, as the world changed and we all attempted to settle into radically new routines around home and work life. And at Awin, we were arguably better insulated from some of these changes. You know, we had been gradually transitioning into a more flexible work environment over the last couple of years. Staff were already able to choose to work from home if it was practical, but we never anticipated making such a dramatic transformation all at once. But it was really heartening, and I'm so proud of the team to see how well they adapted to this new normal. And you can see here our rapid increase in the use of Microsoft Teams for communication as a case in point, ramping up massively over the course of the year. Taking over 1,000 staff out of the office and setting them up at home without any disruption to the running of the network during a global pandemic was a huge feat. And so, again, I'm full of praise for our IT teams and the whole company really for the way they took to this. And just as Awin staff increased adoption of online communication, that was indicative of this lockdown effect, but so too was the massive increase in online adoption that we witnessed across the wider population. Ofcom, the UK regulator for the broadcasting and telco industry, found that the average daily time spent online by UK adults jumped from 3.5 hours in September last year to over 4 hours in April this year. And that increase in time spent online it meant a significant rise in all online activities, whether it was content streaming, website traffic, mobile app usage, and of course, online shopping. Now, lockdown represented the biggest surge in this activity. And although that peak earlier in the year has declined somewhat since March and April, what we have seen is looking increasingly like a permanent increase in online adoption of these activities by many people. And many companies are now scrabbling to bolster their online presence to ensure that they can meet these customers where they're spending so much of their time. And one of the frequently cited charts that best illustrates this was published back in May by the US Department of Commerce. And it highlighted the extent to which the e-commerce penetration rate in the US retail industry had jumped during the lockdown. Now, you have to remember the US retail sector alone is worth some $5 trillion. And whilst e-commerce penetration in retail had been steadily rising over the past decade, as it has everywhere really around the globe, the majority of activity still occurred offline. With online share, it was around 16% at the end of 2019. But the pandemic and the subsequent lockdown has completely reshaped that. And recent analysis suggests the rate has jumped to over a quarter in the space of just 8 weeks. And you've got to remember, this is a huge individual industry, and each percentage point increase represents around $50 billion worth of activity that has shifted from offline to online. And these are obviously US numbers, but I think eMarketer has done some studies that proves that this is happening in almost every major market around the world, and certainly all the major markets that Awin operates in. Now, from Awin's perspective, this new influx in demand for online shopping and these unique circumstances that everyone was faced by led to revealing trends in the activity we were tracking for our clients. And that told us something about how the world was changing. In March, with the UK government urging workers to stay at home, Awin tracked an immediate uplift in sales for fibre broadband packages as home workers sought to bolster their internet connections and ensure they could continue to work effectively without disruption. And in April, as the global travel industry ground to a halt, so did demand from travellers, uncertain, of course, when they might be able to holiday again. And we saw a 92% drop in travel bookings year on year. And for those that did book, they were making reservations far into the future. The average lag time between booking and stay dates during April doubled that pre-COVID, reaching over 90 days at its peak, as travellers sought to minimise the risk of their holidays being cancelled by lockdown. And May saw those not spending money on holidays instead spending more time and money in their homes and gardens. And the DIY and garden sales increased by almost 150% on Awin's network. We saw one seed supplier rocket to the top of our growth charts, as those in lockdown with a garden enthusiastically took to a brand new hobby that allowed them to still enjoy the outdoors. And from DIY to DY, June saw the continued rise of the erotic subcategory as retailers in this niche found themselves particularly popular with those in lockdown for whom no amount of gardening, board games, Zoom quizzes, and Joe Wicks workouts could provide satisfaction. And one funny stat we actually drew out from Awin was that it was the gardening retailers doing very well in the UK, but the sex shop retailers doing well in Germany. You can make of that what you will. And in July, we witnessed an increasing number of sales for Awin's specialist face mask sellers, with over 3,000 tracked during the month as consumers sought to stay safe outside their homes. And you're going to hear more about this particular story actually later in our Awin Access session when we speak to one of those face mask retailers. Amazing story. So naturally, with all of this shopping activity occurring online across the population, we're seeing a profound change in the complexion of who these shoppers are too. And as the global Awin data here shows, the proportion of new customers that are being tracked by our brands that measure this value It's been at an all-time high during peak lockdown, actually 40% up on the same time last year. And though that peak has settled down slightly since, we're still seeing new customer rates at a significantly higher rate than in previous years. Add to this the fact that so many online shoppers are increasingly prone to trying new brands when they do, almost 40% according to McKinsey's research, and you can see how much opportunity there is for marketers right now. There are a raft of new opportunities for connecting with your audience online, for acquiring new customers who have never bought from you online, and to potentially steal valuable market share from your competitors who aren't maybe as quick to adapt their online marketing strategies to this sudden and dramatic change. But of course, at the same time, there's huge downward pressure on advertising budgets right now, and even the digital ones. The latest Advertising Association forecast for ad spend in the UK this year suggests an average decline across all formats of over 15%, with no growth forecast really until Q2 2021. Traditional ad formats like cinema, out of home, and newspapers have been on a downward trend for decades, as Walk's analysis shows here, with digital formats largely replacing them. But what's particularly interesting to note in this evolution is the recent rise of e-commerce based advertising, as brands increasingly shift their spend towards platforms and ad models which can provide them with clear visibility of ROI and sales performance in online spaces. Despite the decline of most other ad models right now, Walk's forecasts project brands will spend almost $60 billion worldwide on e-commerce advertising this year, and that represents growth of more than 18% on last year. With so much uncertainty swirling around the wider industry right now, advertisers that are keen to capitalize on consumers' shift to online need to be absolutely certain that their investment will be effective, and e-commerce based ad models help to provide some semblance of certainty amid that chaos. So those more general ad spend cuts are also driving brands to invest in many of the same old places too. The ad industry's triopoly of Google, Facebook, and Amazon will, of course, further consolidate their stranglehold on ad spend through the pandemic as advertisers reach for the familiar tools they've grown dependent on in recent years. But that dependency remains a fraught issue for many advertisers and publishers, and they recognize the dangers of relying so much on big tech's gatekeepers, and who frequently find themselves unable to assert control over their marketing campaigns because of the concentrated market power these walled gardens wield. As Damon Reeve, the CEO from the Ozone Project, which is a collaborative advertising partnership between some of the UK's biggest media publishers, he said that the reliance on these big platforms is an extremely frustrating one. I think frustration is perhaps something of an understatement here. There has been over the last few years a rising tide of anger within the wider advertising industry about the power that big tech and particularly Google and Facebook hold over it. And we seem to have finally reached a stage where government regulators feel compelled to step in. In July this year, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority released its final report on its investigation of competition in digital advertising, and was pretty damning of the lack of transparency that the duopoly provided to its advertiser clients, not to mention the abuse of power they leveraged within the market thanks to the reach of their monopolies. And more recently, the US House of Representatives had published its own critique. I mean, many of you may have seen the big tech leaders getting grilled in Congress. So they've published their own critique of these companies, as well as Amazon and Apple for similar techniques. And a joint statement from the two leading figures behind that antitrust report said there was quote, a clear and compelling need for Congress to take action to restore competition, improve innovation, and safeguard American democracy. So clearly then, as 2020 has gathered pace, a sense of momentum has built in which businesses are looking for new ways to grow and connect with audiences online that is both measurable, but also allows them to retain authority over how they do this. Marketing activities that can be clearly tied to demonstrable outputs like sales are invaluable, but so are ad models that allow companies to configure campaigns on their own terms, ensuring they don't have dependency on any one partner. And it's precisely this sweet spot of modern marketing alchemy that our industry provides. However we refer to what it is that we all do, whether it's partner marketing, affiliate marketing, performance marketing, partnerships, it represents an incredibly compelling ad model right now. Our industry provides a diverse, measurable haven for ad spend, and it's one that empowers all participants. So by working directly with one another, advertisers, publishers, and a wide variety of other technology partners can ensure they retain control over how they do business together. Our industry's flexibility of payment models that are tied to performance across a diverse range of media on the open web can adapt to any set of objectives. And at Awin, we're seeing significant growth across a range of metrics in 2020 that suggest businesses are increasingly realizing this potential. So if we look here on the slide, you've got 1,000 new SMEs, we're 36% up on last year. More revenue tracked by Awin brands with robust app tracking in place, up 30%. An increase, as I mentioned before, of new customers tracked. 5 million plus 5 million on the clicks generated by Awin partners. 10,000 new affiliate signups, and that we experienced huge surge, huge growth in affiliate signups, and a huge change, as I mentioned before, in a mix of advertisers in our top 10, but also the mix of publishers. And that's all, of course, before Q4's golden quarter, and who knows what we might see during this this very exciting period of the year. But to make sure we capitalize on this unique historical moment, we need to ensure that as an industry, we are open to every kind of business partnership. Being accessible means being open to every size of business, whether it's micro SMEs and startups to big box retailers and enterprise level brands. It means providing a platform for effectively tracking sales across a range of online environments, from browsers to apps, from social media platforms to mass media institutions. And it means ensuring that our tools are sophisticated enough for the most experienced and advanced marketers, but also simple enough for those who are new to our industry and need a helping hand in getting set up. And it means that regardless of the sector you're based in, regardless of how you want to grow your business, we can provide you with a means of doing just that. So if you're interested in learning exactly how we're opening up business opportunities for our partners across all of these areas and more, then please join us for the day. In pulling the content together today, we wanted you to hear about areas of the industry that we believe are set for future growth, demonstrating the value of affiliate marketing has long been a pain point for the channel. And we strongly feel that full and comprehensive attribution of how affiliates add value across the purchase journey helps secure future investment. So after me, you're going to hear about the latest insights gleaned from those of our clients leveraging our multi-touch attribution solution, SingleView, and why last click is the performance marketing metric for yesterday's world. Measuring that full journey can only be possible if we extend tracking across all devices and platforms. App-based commerce remains a seriously untapped driver of growth for affiliate marketers, and one that has long gone unrewarded for publishers. But that is changing rapidly at Awin, and you can learn more about this transformation from our own app specialist, Clementine Lavender, alongside Oleg Shipilev from the mobile platform branch. Often you'll hear just from brands in the channel, but a 2-year project has seen us crack how to market to businesses of all shapes and sizes. Our industry has arguably neglected the potential of grassroots brands and micro SMEs, but that has changed with the launch of Awin Access, our simplified marketing platform for the small businesses that make up the backbone of every major economy. And Michelle O'Sullivan has spearheaded the launch of Awin Access, and she'll be speaking to 2 of the early success stories we've witnessed rise to prominence thanks to the partnerships it's facilitated. And speaking of success stories, we have a dedicated session focused on 2 of our 8 award-winning campaigns from this year. So that's Dorothy Perkins and VoucherCloud. We'll discuss their strategy alongside RevLifter and mobiles.co.uk, who between them picked up 3 awards at this year's PMAs. And in these sessions, you'll hear quite different examples of how affiliates are able to both build brand campaigns, and use the latest tech to engage and target the right customers at the right time. And you can hear from more leading brands in the industry when we host our digital transformation panel later in the afternoon. And then finally, at the end of the day, myself, alongside Ian Charlesworth, the regional managing director for AWIN, will be taking your questions alongside members of the senior UK team as part of our wrap up and live Q&A. So please do make sure you get involved. So after all that, what do we want you to take away from today? Well, in a rapidly changing world of digital transformation, like the one we're all living through right now, businesses need ad tech partners that can be ready to adapt to sudden and dramatic changes in fortune. And at AWIN, we feel we're uniquely placed to do that. With our mix of cutting edge marketing technology and wealth of expertise, we're ready to fuel your engine of e-commerce and ad tech adoption through robust affiliate partnerships. And please, if you'd like to understand how we can do that, then I would urge you to join us for today's session, because the guys have put together some brilliant content. They really should be quite fascinating sessions. And yeah, we'd really be honored if you could stick around. And then, of course, as I said, answer your questions in the wrap-up session later today. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you all stay safe and healthy, and I look forward to speaking to you all later today.